I've seen that man actually backhand his daughter in front of me.
The biggest thing they teach, if it goes against the Bible, it's not true.
As mentioned in prior episodes, I'm very curious as to what ex-members of the Hebrew Israelites have to say, but I'm particularly interested in what the women have to say because I tried to interview them and I got turned down twice. Luckily for me, people reach out to me sometimes to fill those gaps. I truly had a great time talking to Yoshua, a former member of IUIC in Brooklyn. A lot of y'all specifically asked that I speak to IUIC members. I heard you. Be careful what you wish for. I also spoke to Yeshara. Her father was really deep into the Hebrew Israelite ideology and lifestyle and brought her along for the ride. We talked for a long time, and this is a long video, but there's even more that I couldn't include here. I tried to keep it streamlined. I got chapters on the bottom. Click around. Feel free to jump to the sections that are most relevant for you. I promise I won't be offended. Let's get to it. First off, I'll just, give you the floor and let you kind of briefly introduce your involvement with the Hebrew Israelites, and we can dive into the specifics later, but just kind of give us an overview.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Well, bro, I was like 15, 16. My brother, the older brother, he was into it first. I would hear it every so often, little bits and pieces. So I knew about them. He would go every Saturday, Sometimes we would go watch movies and stuff. So we stopped doing that on Saturdays so often. But every time we would go, he'd be spitting something to me like, oh, Jesus Christ is black, this and that. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm 15, 16. I don't care about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But one day he hit me with, yeah, man, just everybody that's not down with this, they just going to have to, I'm going to start cutting people off. I'm like, dang. So, me 15, 16, I'm like, my older brother gonna cut me off for this? Like, what? And then like looking back on it, and then some people told me like that was like a manipulation tactic. Like, oh, saying that to get you in.
Yeshara, thanks for joining me.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Where are you? You're Philly, right?
Yeah, I'm born and raised.
Okay, born and raised, and from talking to the ISUPK, I heard from them that there was a big contingent of Hebrew Israelites in Philly.
Yeah, there was no necessary, I guess, grouping name for us. I think we considered ourselves the normal Hebrew Israelites, and the UPK was UPK.
Gotcha. So like less like we need branding, we need merch type of deal.
No, yeah, they were more like, no, we want to. They were very much the low key. They didn't even get online. In my personal opinion, I've been a kid online since like early 2000s. I wouldn't really see them online, like YouTube randomly looking them up until 2012-ish.
First day I go, it was a smaller little building. They got a much bigger building as I was there. But it was a good time, honestly. Like it was a community. Like it was people my age there. They trying to chop it up with me. Hey man, you played the Clash of Clans and this and that. Trying to join the little game of things. But then also it was that layer behind it. I didn't notice at first. I remember when he told me that, like, hey man, let's join a little Clash of Clans. One of the soldiers there was like, hey, he only been here one day. You can't be letting him join stuff like that quick, blah blah this and that. So that already give me a little, some type of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was there 4 years. I became a soldier. How they do like ranks there? It's like,
what year did you like this first meeting you went to? What year was that?
Ooh, I was 16. It had to be 2017.
Yeah, you were talking about Clash of Clans, so that seems
2016. Actually, 2016 or 17.
Yeah, please continue. I just want to get the details as we go.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, then so I was there about 4 years. Probably took about a year or two because how they do the rankings. They do like soldier, then you officer, then similar to how ISUPK does it, like with officer 10, 20, 30, or all so on and so forth. But I was like 17 when I became a soldier, and I was like one of the youngest soldiers, so it was more expected out of me. I was supposed to know more scriptures. I was supposed to be more have more heat in the truth. You know what I'm saying? That's have more fervent heat for the truth. Pushing it as much as possible, going to schools. It was kind of funny because Some of the leaders would be like, hey, push as hard as you can, give out flyers. So, every Black Hispanic person you see, just in case. Like this is when I went to college. And they had other officers, other leadership like, hey, chill out, you there, you there with the heathen, blah, blah, blah. Just get your degree and leave, basically. So that was like that two sides fighting together.
For example, my father, he got into it because of Pan-African studies, where they were teaching, I think, the average person African American history that they would not have been taught in school, with how much whitewashing and just sweeping under literal genocide and human trafficking under the rug.
Right.
And so my father got really into it in the 80s, which I always found interesting. I asked him why then? And he did kind of mention that around that time he did remember the move bombings. I don't believe he was there exactly in that time, but I think he came right after.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, my father being part of that generation where I could tell, most in my personal opinion, a lot of the Hebrew Israelite men came in because of extreme bouts of racism, experiencing that, of course, throughout their lives. My father reminded me throughout my entire life how he was one of 3 Black kids in his school growing up in the Lower East Manhattan. The secret segregation that goes on, a lot of the neighborhoods, the medical racism that he experienced, that at that time there was no terminology for it. And so he really, for them, it really felt like psychological torture on top of physical torture and many other things, which completely understandable. But somehow, some way, he got from there into the Hebrew Israelite sector, that free, I'm trying to get more woke, or I guess conscious Black man, and feeling like, oh, there weren't maybe a lot of answers as to why it felt like the world hated me, until you get into then the biggest thing to me, which is what gets most Hebrew Israelites, is I'm gonna give you an answer for the quote unquote curse of Black people.
What was it, your brother's message about potential exclusion, that you think was your first initial push to lean into this, or was it more than that?
It was for sure. The first class, me wanting to go to the first class, was that for sure. But then after that, when I saw that community was there, because yeah, I have friends, obviously, that I hung out with and stuff, but it was more of it wasn't just friendship. It was they call it a family, because it was kind of treated like that. Like, it was people that's gonna be on your ass about doing stuff that's good for you. You know what I'm saying? But it's also the people everybody human. So people still try to do this and that. Everybody fall, and you hear that all the time. Got to keep the commandments. When somebody fall, it's like, oh, we all fall. We got to keep the commandments. You know what I'm saying? Which, as a religious person, you kind of understand that. But as a Hebrew Israelites, and most of the Hebrew Israelites, you don't get that when they teach you on the streets. But yeah, so it was always when somebody messed up, or when I say messed up, it could be anything from smoking weed to go to a strip club to working on a Saturday. It could be any of that stuff. But yeah, it was more of that community. I love my family, my actual family, my blood family. But at the time, I wasn't really hanging out with them as much. I was more of getting to myself a little bit more. So it brought me out of my shell, I'll say.
It all comes back to, okay, what circumstances were these people born into, raised in, what's surrounded by, even dating back to the people who started to bring that ideology to the Americas in the first place, born into slavery. There is no, better breeding ground for this kind of ideology than literal torture and being surrounded by an absolute nightmare.
Right, that actually reminds me of those recruiting tactics when you talk about torture. I'm like,
Oh, please elaborate.
yeah, as a kid, I remember there was a few times, and at first I couldn't remember. I was like, I remember who the leader, I guess, of that congregation was at that time, but I couldn't remember the specific temple until I was looking it up with the One Calendar Coalition. So I guess we'll call him Prince K. He ran the temple named Kefarym, and that to me never really had a solid location. It was just this name is, I guess, held under this man, and wherever he goes and his family goes, and he had 2 wives. Don't ask me which one was legally married to him. I have no idea to this day. But I remember we going to Kefarym on Sundays. They didn't necessarily do what I realize now was recruiting tactics on the Sabbath. They kept a lot of that for Sunday. My father would have me every other weekend, and we would go to one location. I, for the life of me, can't remember exactly where it is, but I remember the area about in Philadelphia where it is, like right off Kelly Drive, somewhere there, where we went to this house. And I say at the time, I was like, why was it so weird? Because that's why I felt like this man was a little scammy, and everything was clicking as I got older. The house was always being renovated. I couldn't figure out why, like, nothing was ever necessarily done with it. Are we staying here? Are we like here temporarily and then going somewhere else? But he's a contractor, and like in his real life, he is a contractor. He's done work for my father. He's done work for a lot of people, but I've also heard firsthand accounts in the car with my father and the person telling the story that he has scammed like thousands of dollars from individual people and the community. Allegedly. We'll say allegedly because I don't
Yeah.
have the exact, but allegedly.
Sure.
That being said, at Kefarym on Sundays, I remember I had to be maybe anywhere from like 8 and 12. And my dad would just take me to what I just thought was like, oh, he's doing like council meetings, because he had a level of respect by the other Hebrew Israelite men and brothers. I would just see them discussing like actual calendar based things or things they're doing with the temple. But then every few Sundays, they would bring these guys in. I had no idea who these men were before. I would be polite and like be somewhere in the corner because there was nothing but older men there. Like, I don't remember any other kids being there. And then they would play videos. They had found these old school real YouTube videos from when they would when white racist mobs would do lynchings of black people. And the anger, the emotions, it's like really understand now. This is the way that they would try to elicit the highest amount of emotion from those men, to say, here, look at all your ancestors have been through. Look at all the degrading, literally psychotic things that have happened to our ancestors.
Yeah.
And this is why as if it was like added proof to the reason why we were the people, the real Jews in the Bible, while we were the ones struggling. And that, turning back to turning back to Yahweh is the right path, is the right thing to do. You're coming back into yourself. At that time, there was a lot of conspiracy theories, like the Hebrew Israelites. Many different people kind of get into them based on different, in my personal opinion, and just like from what I heard my parents and other older people from that generation, a lot of spirituality conscious groups, sometimes conspiracy theories. Um, and like the conglomerate, because it might not always be really in your face.
Would you say that your involvement in IUIC like encouraged you? Well, anybody? Would you say anybody in that group kind of encouraged or fed into this separation from your family?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But they do it in sly ways. It's always first anything they say, they always have scriptures to back it up. You know what I mean?
Right.
They love
I peeped that. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. It's,
Yeah.
they say precept upon precept. What about something in the New Testament that wasn't applicable to the stuff in the Old Testament? It's a different timeline, different people, different everything, different rulership. Like, oh no,
Yeah.
it's the scriptures. Everything matters, everything connect. That's how they go off of it. It's like conspiracy theories. You know what I'm saying? Everything connects to something.
Earlier before that, my father took me to the late great Black's Wax Museum. I believe that's what it's called. I'm telling you, for almost 20 years, I blocked this thing out like a fever dream. I thought it was a fever dream. But then my father also kept telling me, no, we went to Maryland. And I was like, okay, so that clearly happened.
Yeah, that happened.
And as a kid, I'm terrified because of the things I'm seeing. Like, I can't process this at a 4-year-old. I can't process seeing a literal depiction of Black people being enslaved on the transatlantic slave trade on a boat, being thrown off into a sea of infested sharks, body parts skewed everywhere, and I'm hearing like light screams in the background. That is nowhere near appropriate for a child.
Not all of the exhibits are horrifying.
The things I've heard, like, I know that these are jokes, but I've legitimately heard my father joking about how he cannot wait for the day where he has a white slave. And I literally remember being
Damn.
like 12 and thinking, but white people will not be good slaves. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not into slavery one and two. Like, I just want to be
All the slaves we have to choose from. Why are you? That's so funny. That's so funny.
that was legit my thought. But you know, for the woman's experience, like you said, like, yeah, that's one how they got the men. In my personal experience, I've noticed that most of the women come because of the men.
Oh, okay. Because that was gonna be my next question. It's like what brings them in independently? Because I know the coupling up happens. I know there's marriages and whatnot, and I get how that can kind of just work because other cults do that.
Yeah,
But like, yeah, how do they independently get
that's a
sucked
very,
into this?
that's a very good question. So, from I'll give you a background. Like, my mother's Jamaican. She was born and raised Christian, and then sometime when she came to America, like I think the late 80s, she became a Seventh-day Adventist, and then from there transitioned into Hebrew Israelite circle. I think that on top of like maybe things that she was experiencing here, there was just this sense of, and I completely get it, not understanding terms like colorism, like knowing that you are being treated differently because you're darker skinned, because or being made fun of because you look closer to being like you look like your ancestors, which were African descendants or African. Um, and so I think this was one of those spaces where she really did finally feel appreciated, or it just like in the beginning, it kind of felt like, yeah, like these men are reminding me that I am someone who should be protected, or, reminding me of things that give me this semblance of experiencing something that historically Black women have never been able to experience, which is that softness, that femininity.
Sure.
There being the idea of the cover of protection of don't touch her because she is a God-fearing Hebrew Israelite woman, and
Sacred.
she obeys. I was taught to obey my parents,
Yeah.
to sometimes even my detriment, unfortunately. And that was my mother's experience, her coming into, being approached by a man. I think my mother was about 30 when she met my father. My father was about like in his late 30s, like 30, excuse me, 38, I would say. And my father took her out to a movie, and I asked him what movie it was, and it was Sankofa.
Mm.
My father let me watch Sankofa at 12, which scarred me, honestly.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I don't know how that's romantic, but okay. Well, whatever. It is what it
To
is.
each their own, you
To each
know?
their own. That
Yeah.
was how I realized, oh, my father was courting her, because it wasn't very long. I think they probably courted for like a year and a half or years, and then got engaged and then got married. And then within like 2 or so years had me. And yeah, being born and raised around other Hebrew Israelite women, seeing a lot come in, seeing a lot go. From what I can tell you from my personal experience, the women who actually are dipping their toe into the Hebrew Israelite space to genuinely figure out what's going on here, because they actually feel that they are on a personal spiritual journey, they do not stay for long, because they learn very quickly this is not a space of equality, or you actually feeling heard, or even
Mm.
equity of like balancing overt power, covert power. This is very much a patriarchal space. The Hebrew Israelites are very specific. My father said you can't be Hebrew Israelite unless your father's a Hebrew Israelite. They are not matriarchal, matrilineal in my personal perspective, like the Orthodox Jewish people. And so those type of women, though I do love them, I think if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been curious about many different things within, especially the Hebrew Israelite space, or question the Tanakh or the Bible's teachings. But I know that a lot of them went on to do other things that I'm really happy for them about, or I'm just happy that they're free. Most other women just come in because they are, I'm going to be very kind, but there's only so much, there's only so
I,
kind I can say.
I think I think I
You're
get what you're getting at.
you're being
Like,
deluded into thinking that you have an elevated side chick position. I'm sorry. It's the
that's
truth.
that's what I figured you were gonna say. Yeah.
There's a lot of women who come in, again, you usually, I've noticed, they're sometimes the relative of somebody. So if they came in younger, they were probably like the niece, the daughter, the cousin of somebody. And then maybe as I got older, they probably didn't take it too seriously when they were younger. Something could have happened. I went through my own like moment when I had my own personal psychosis, and I realized like I had felt compelled to either hone down on the religious beliefs that I was indoctrinated with, or to try to take that leap of faith and just try something else that I felt was healthier for me, and I'm happy I did it. But a lot of those girls, like, they were exposed maybe a little bit, and then something maybe pulls them in, or the biggest one, which is just being like a man. They were being chatted up by a Hebrew Israelite man. That man probably wasn't not married yet, and made it seem as though she was his one and only, his queen.
Something I observed from talking to them is that they drop a lot of scripture, and not only that, but I fact checked it, and at least at the bare minimum, they get their scriptures right.
Mhm.
So that I can say about them. They've clearly studied. How much of that like hardcore studying did you experience as you were like entering? And because I know on my side, as I mentioned in my first video,
Mhm.
it reminded me a lot of fraternity pledging when I was in college,
Yeah.
and we had to like they really like pressed a lot of information into us as well.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I just wanted you to kind of like give us a sense of what that studying process was like. How did they enforce that learning process?
Okay. Yeah. It was funny when you brought that fraternity situation up. The face that the captain made. It was funny because how they treat fraternities. Fraternities is one of the most evil things you could do in college. Like some of the other kids my age, they were also in college, and fraternities was the main things. Fraternities, sororities, and the parties. The main three things to stay away from. It's all evil. Nothing good's come from it. So on and so forth. So that studying situation, yes, studying was pushed heavy in IUIC. I'm not sure exactly how they do it in other camps, especially because the other camps, put out iPads and all that type of stuff. But that didn't happen in IUIC. That from when I was there anyway. So how the week would go, I would say I'm gonna go skip to like when I was a soldier, because that was more like concrete of what we had to
Okay.
do. So we would have us like kind of study like tests basically, and we would have that like every week or it was either every week every month. But basically it was a test on the scriptures, and you had to use only your Bible. So with that studying, what they pushed for sure was like reading 4 scriptures a day. They say you read 4 chapters a day. I'm sorry, 4 chapters a day. You start from Genesis, go all the way through to Revelations. I did that twice while I was there. So I've read scriptures. I've skipped over a lot, like the ones that go into like all the names and everything. But the studying is they want to make sure that you know the scriptures. So with anybody that come to you about anything scripture wise, you should have a script for it. You should have okay, Jesus said this. Oh no, the apostle says this. Highlighting, make sure you get your highlighters. The Bible that they like to preach out of is the King James version, and the one with the apocrypha in it. So that particular Bible, 1611 is what they call it. You can buy that on Amazon. I remember I first got mine. It was like $130 for that Bible, and yeah, it was an expensive Bible. And actually, it was a real good Bible. Honestly, I ain't gonna lie. But it was like, oh man, you got a 1611. Oh man, let me look at that Bible. It was like, in the hood too, it's like sometimes you get your new your shoes or whatever. That's kind of just like, oh damn, it's fresh. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that was kind of the thing in IUIC. Like, oh, you got that new Bible? Oh, okay. Oh, you got them fringes on that garment. Hard. It still had that, that big. You giving people their flowers, bigging them up and everything. But going back to the studying, yeah, you got to learn the precepts. They had a little precept book where it's like, this is all the stuff, all the scriptures talking about being black. So this is everything tied to being black.
We're very, in my opinion, Judaistic based with an Afrocentric twist. I did not realize until I was like the end of my teens that there are way more Christian aligning Hebrew Israelites. We didn't even say Jesus. We said JC. We were like, we don't even know who that is.
Right. Right.
And
Wow.
don't know him. And so I'm seeing those examples of men who follow those Orthodox Jewish men's examples. And they also sometimes went to like their temple, like actual synagogue. And you could see their influences, especially in the woman. Like they might not have worn wigs. They had that old school silk press, but hair tied back, long dresses, could cook down. But I've never seen a smile on most of those faces.
Interesting. That's a really interesting look into the dynamics, because I think one thing that I was gonna move to next was
Hmm.
something that I picked up from spending time with ISUPK. I asked them specifically, "Are you anti-Jewish? Are you anti-white?" They they volunteered that they're anti-African, that they're anti-Palestinian, or anybody else that they don't consider to be, valid for membership in their organization. And so I was curious as to those various aspects of the faith community that you were a part of. Like, did they express in any way? Obviously, they're more aligned with Judaism, but like,
Hmm.
what did they express in any way? Anti-white Jew sentiments, anti-white American sentiments, stuff like that.
Absolutely. They're very anti-white Jewish.
Mm.
They do, unfortunately, it's extremely anti-Semitic. Because of how I was raised, I didn't really dawn to me. I could understand racism, I could understand colorism, texturism, could not understand that there is, like, even though you view yourself or you still view yourself in a Jewish lens, you have a certain type of anti-Semitism, when you look back on it at a wider lens. Like I said, the UPK were really known, and we call them the UPK. Like I didn't even realize it was ISUPK until your
Sure.
video. So thank you so much for new
Fair.
information. But
Yeah.
we were just calling them the UPK, and those were the ones who were used in a way as like comedic relief, but also like that was the way that those other Hebrew Israelites supported the UPK. They supported those men being out on the corner of the streets harassing and bombarding random white people.
Was there ever a moment where they were like explaining to you why they take the Bible so literally, or
Mm.
why this is like the truth to them, or did they kind of glaze over that part?
The truth to them, that's the part they beat in. He read the whole. I think he read Deuteronomy 28, almost the whole chapter when you on
Right.
the previous videos. That's what they teach first. That's what they push on the street. That's what the scriptures you always gonna hear, because that's the ones that can tie the most to our history. In America, it's stuff that they can. Okay, this happened, even though it kind of sound like that. It's close enough. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of that stuff.
Right.
Because
Because when I was talking to them, it was very much like, and when I was fact checking all the scriptures and some of the things they were saying, it was very much like, like that doesn't quite hold up.
Yeah.
If I like really, really look at it closely, in your experience, did they just kind of hook? Do they kind of hook people with the Deuteronomy 28 and then just go on from there?
That's exactly what they do. Exactly what they do. You got 28, and then they hit you with, if you disagreeing with us, you're not disagreeing with us. You're disagreeing with the scriptures. And then they might hit you with a read it again, and then the person goes read it again. You know what I'm saying? It was funny. I don't know if you saw it. Drewski did a skit of the Hebrew
I
Israelites.
saw.
I was talking to a couple friends about it. It's funny because how accurate it actually is. Like that's how it be, honestly.
Black man.
Black man.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
But yeah, going back to the scriptures, they start off with that 28, and it's like, oh, that kind of fit. Oh, brother, you got to read this. Read to get you another scripture. Like, oh, do you agree or not? And if you look like you were disagreeing, oh, this brother hate the Bible. He hate God. We give him another scripture. It's beat you down with the scriptures until you either disagree and you say you were atheist, and then they don't want to deal with you no more, or say you half white, your dad was white, they don't want to deal with you no more, or join them. That's how they. It's only three options for them, basically.
So that's pressure. So like, you would you say there's coercion involved in kind of getting you to go along with the message?
Yeah. it didn't seem like that. And even to this day, like at that time, I believed everything that I read. I believed all the stuff I did. Like I read the fringes. If I didn't wear the fringes one day or whatever, I'm, oh dang, what God gonna do to me? Like, you know what I'm saying? They put that fear into you. That's what the Bible. That's what a lot of religions do nowadays. But how they do it is very sinister, in my opinion. Just because how down bad a lot of people in the community are. They need that help. They need that community. Churches used to be that spot. I feel like, you know, growing up, even not really my generation, but the generation before me, like still going to church as kids, wearing all the Easter dresses and everything. I'm seeing pictures and everything. We didn't do that in my age as much, you know. So that church, we got to find some way to get community. So a lot of the young people find it, and then a lot of older people don't got no community either. So they're like, oh, I need, you know what I'm saying? I would love somebody to to be able to not even watch my kids, but like, oh, I'm working, I can't do this, I need help. Single parents, yeah, it's a lot going on in the community, and they help with that. They do. Like I would never put that against them. It's just they have that religious tip behind it. If you don't believe everything we say, you don't get no help no more. I got a community now. I'm able to, especially as a man, I'm able to like lead people. I'm able to tell people what to do a lot of times. Yeah, it's just
And that's another parallel to pledging. You know, after you get through, regardless of what you went through to get there, there's very much that part after you cross where you get to do the same thing to freshmen, sophomore, whoever coming up behind you.
Yeah.
And so you have that power, you have that importance, you have these line names, you have a line jacket, you have line brothers, and you have events on campus, and people see you as a local celebrity. And I'm sure there's aspects of that. I mean, I spent 2 days with Cap, like, and you know, just all the jackets and the kind of paraphernalia and whatnot. Like, people know you on the street at that point. Did you experience like an elevation of how people perceived you?
It's respect to their persons. That's what they would call it, tied into the scriptures, and they do bring that up. It's not like something that like doesn't get talked about in the camp itself. It's like, hey, don't be a respecter of men. Like, everybody's on the same level. You know what I'm saying? As far as under Christ, you know,
right?
It go God, Christ, man, woman. That's how they treat. Period. So it's like that's how it is.
What is the relationship to science and IUIC? Like, what do they teach?
The biggest thing they teach, if it goes against the Bible, it's not true. If it supports the scriptures, it works.
I'm sorry. It's just how you said it. It was just oh my God. Yeah. But I suspected that, but hearing you just say it was crazy.
Yeah, because it'd be times where I'm just like, you know, because it is scriptures talk about like, don't believe everything science believes, don't believe everything, you know. And so to a certain extent I can believe that, but then when you have like, I wasn't there for COVID, but I can't imagine the stuff.
Oh my God, yeah.
I can't imagine it, because it's like they're doing this and they're doing that, and they don't want us to meet this. It's the devil, and they don't want us to even congregate anymore. I can imagine the class. I could probably make a whole class just off imagining what they could say. And
100%.
So looking back on it, I'm just like, yeah. So if it, even like the globe, as far as the flat Earth theory, they definitely believed, at least in the Old Testament, that the Earth was flat. They believe it's a globe, and they have scriptures to back it up. Like, oh, it's a sphere. It's this and that. It's this and that. That's not. It's a disc. A disc isn't. You know, a disc is a disc. It's flat. Anyway, but they're like, no, it's a disc like this, and it's a 360. Like, they have some ways to push what they want to, basically. So even though a lot of the scriptures they say, I think they are accurate on as far as what they believed back then, they also have their own, like, hey, no, this mean that. No, actually, this mean that today's age. Oh yeah, that mean that before. But scriptures are forever. God is forever. These scriptures still matter today. So
yeah, that's definitely the sense I picked up, was just that. And one of the things I brought up in the video, where I was fact checking, was just like something I've always felt about Christianity, about Abrahamic religions in general. Like how we take these ancient peoples and these very specific scriptures that mention, like, I think it was like ships of Tarshish in this one scripture, and like, you know, it was like goats of Ephah and Midian or something like that. Real places, like real places. And and it's like we take that and then we translate it to modern day, you know, 21st century in America, and it just doesn't translate, man. This is a very specific people in a very specific time who's like sacrificed animals and walked everywhere, and it's like I don't think it applies, and I think we're they're bending the scripture out of shape to make sure they can stay the chosen people. And they're not the only ones who've done that.
Oh,
Like
no.
a lot of other religious groups, almost every other religious group thinks that they're the chosen people from the Bible. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that's an inherent conflict that I drew attention to. Yeah, just give me the good and the questionable that you experienced while you were in it.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, going back to the good, the community. You really feel like you're a part of the community if you feel love there. You know what I'm saying? They always say, hey, I love you. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't say that. People don't say that to their friends. You know what I'm
That's
saying? Your
true.
homeboys, you know what I'm saying?
That's
You
true.
don't know since high school, middle school, they'll say, you love them.
Yeah.
Give them it's always it's like a little dap up when they see you. You know what I'm saying? It's that feeling. And then that community that always having somebody to look out for you. You know what I'm saying? Even if it was time because I grew up. I mean, I didn't grow. I was there for 4 years, but it was like I saw so many people leave and come. I saw so many people get elevated, get lowered. You know what I'm saying? As far as the leadership goes, and it was I learned a lot. And they talk, even though I don't agree with everything they talk about how being a man. Growing up in a single mother household, it was kind of weird. Having that all the men over me tell me what to do, but it was good for me overall. I think.
Right.
Questionable. Definitely how they treat women, for sure. That's how they treat women, how they treat LGBTQ community.
Unfortunately, many times, even though there are men who don't, like my father has never done the polygamy. He doesn't believe in having more than one wife. But there are many I've seen many Hebrew Israelite men who literally have more than one wife. And usually too many times those women get sidetracked or they get like kind of bamboozled, that feeling of like, wait, you told me something and I'm actually believing that, you're not going to take another wife, or if you do take another wife, maybe you at least talk to me about it. I don't think that they realize that they don't have a say when it comes to that. Most of the laws when it comes to the idea of banishment, punishment, exile, really, in my personal opinion, are very much heavily affected the woman versus the men. I think in their minds, they don't even realize, honey, that's your boyfriend, but to you, that's you're the next concubine. You're the next mistress.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also creating broken homes while at the same time advocating against those same broken homes that they're
Yeah.
creating. It's a lot
Yeah.
of
They were very adamant, actually. Just speaking about the ISUPK now, very adamant about maintaining the integrity of the family and elevating the woman. But they're also, on the other hand, they're very clear about polygamy being lawful within their practice, at least, and claiming that women are happy in polygamy. Which, without women there to speak about it, I'm not taking that too seriously. But it's interesting. I think the picture you're painting of like what's sold to both men and women when they're entering these organizations, and then the reality of how this actually plays out, and how polygamy is not necessarily something that they happily skip into. It's like, oh, this is happening to me. Oh, word. Like, I didn't get a say. I don't have any autonomy here. That's a completely different situation than what they're
some
painting, I think.
many women know it can happen, but I hate to say it, I feel like the general consensus is they don't really sit down and realize, oh no, it's going to happen
Going to
more
happen.
than likely 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen to you at this point, in terms of from what I'm seeing, like my generation and those the last generation of the last decade, I have no idea what they're doing. The polygamy, though understandable, in my personal opinion, it's a new age popularity within Hebrew Israelite spaces. And I say that because, again, my father is from that boomer generation. He was raised and taught by the silent generation. They were not polygamous, because most of the women who come in don't have kids. But a lot of the men who come in have already had a life that it feels like they're running away from and trying to correct
Sure.
the
Sure.
the appearance of Hebrew Israelite.
One of the big things that I saw from the video is how they call their husbands Lord. That's a
Yeah.
big thing. Some women don't do it, and they get looked at a certain type of way if they don't. Like, oh, he supposed to be leadership, but his wife don't even call him Lord. That's the type of vibe we get, and very subservient. Say, it's I never had that feeling of they're, I don't know. It's weird because how the scriptures say, the woman treat their man like a lord, the men treat the man as Jesus, like the church. It's something like that. I'm butchering scripture, but love them as the church. And I did feel like it wasn't like, oh, I wouldn't protect my wife, I wouldn't stand up for her. I didn't see that. It was more of, hey, I'm talking to the guys right now. Can you go grab me this and that and that? And it was like, oh yeah, sir. I'll get up right away. That type of thing, and that always threw me off. And obviously, they gotta wear a certain attire. They, sit on a complete other side as men. It's just weird things that probably worked back then in the old days or something like that. It just wouldn't work in society today. It just doesn't. And it hurts them more than it helps, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, and I've heard, because I haven't been into any actual church services or even seen women in a school, because when I went to visit the ISUPK, it was a bunch of guys. It was like 10 men in the room when I was talking to Cap.
Yeah.
So when women are present, do they sit in the back? Like, that's something I heard happens in like actual proceedings, like church proceedings.
Though most of the classes I've been to, or most of the locations I've been to, it was like more of a side thing. Like women sit on the left side, men sit on the right side.
So it's just segregation, is it? Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I also seeing it, you might not even know, in all the camps I went to, it was always more women than men. Always.
Women are not really allowed to speak up for themselves unless their husband is beating them. And even in my personal opinion, or what I've seen, because my father is a part of a council for that, still always advise that woman and that man. They advise the man to get help, or they advise him to stay counseling. They will even like try to find another Hebrew Israelite therapist, something, to help. But obviously the situation won't work or help itself out because you're encouraging people to stay in a very toxic domestic violence situation for the sake of an idea of a family.
How they treat women, it's like baby banks, so just keep pushing them out. So that make it even harder for them to leave. Wow. Now you got 4 or 5 kids. You only been there for 3 years, but you pop one out every 9 months, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So would you say women in the community are typically partnered up, or are they single?
I say I don't know, because it's a lot of married couples there. That's one thing they push a lot. Marriage. Again, while I'm there, I'm like, oh, that's a great thing. You know what I'm saying? Men and women together, because there's so much divorce, so much. Well, a lot of people are single parent, come from single parent households, so that's like, it is good to see. But then you look at the back end, now you're stuck almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that pressure around being baby banks, like, that's a crazy way to put it, but I get your meaning. That's crazy. But just them being baby banks, that's
you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. I love that you that you phrased it that way. That's just hilarious. But the pressure they put on, like, what form did that take? Was it like within each marriage? Was there pressure coming from the man to be like, give me more children? Was this something that was also being taught? Like,
nothing. It was everything that's being taught. Like, right. That's like, again, going back to what you were saying before, they are very literal in those scriptures. Like, if by their interpretation. So what they are teaching, that's what everybody should be understanding. They all should be on one accord.
Multiply.
Exactly. Be fruitful and multiply. You heard the scriptures, blah, blah, blah.
When they divorced, I quickly realized, there's not much support for my mother like there is for my father. Everybody is still talking to my father. Everybody's still in his corner. My mom probably had 2 people who she could still talk to, even to this day. Like, probably still, like, those are the only 2 women she could talk to. And one of those women was the mother of my friend who left. They had their parents were divorced in a similar way to how my parents were. And thankfully, though, for my friend, that was her way of ending having to go to Sabbath every weekend because her father moved to Georgia. And though, and I saw her mother, like, take some time to just say, I'm done, I'm gonna go find myself. I remember before that I was still in high school. This is Sabbath. I think we probably just closed out. Like, the sun had just set. The women were getting ready to make some of their food and warm it up. And I think there were just like really small kids there. I might have been the only teenage girl of my age. So I was just kept to myself. And I remember this man came up to me, sat down next to me, and started just talking to me like, "Hey, how are you?" Like, chatting me up. And I'm like, I look everywhere. I'm like, is there an adult here who can help me? Because does he not know how young I am? Not old, how young I am, and I am still in high school?
Right.
What is going on? And I'm thinking at that time, maybe the men didn't see, but I was like, no, I think y'all did. Maybe y'all didn't like care. I don't know. But I felt that was the first time I had ever actually felt unsafe in Hebrew Israelite spaces. I knew that there was going to be a time where I was going to be asked, especially with how I presented. If I presented as a very, it's the word is always humble. I think that's what, like, I can't stand that word to this day. A humble, meek, like, woman who always wore her scarves, who always like dressed conservatively, I would have been expected to be married. Even and that's something that we don't talk about, is some communities do practice or try to practice arranged marriages, because that
Sure.
almost happened to
Yeah.
me, and it almost happened to my friend as well. But I knew that was gonna come. Like, sometimes I would go to New York and they would say, "Oh my God, you're getting older. You're getting so, like, you're so beautiful. You know my son?" No, I don't. And I don't want to know your son. But in that situation, I'm just sitting there. I'm like, can anybody come and help me?
Sure.
I don't know how to handle myself. I don't know what's going on. Like, I just want this man out of my face. I get this on the streets. I was hoping I wouldn't get this inside of a temple. I started to allow myself to remember the things that happened to me as a child, good and bad. And I was like, it taught me to suppress my queerness. It taught me
Mm.
to be extremely fearful of telling somebody that I even had these feelings towards the same sex, because I remember my father saying things like, his older sister is a lesbian. She's
Mhm.
been in a partnership since before I was born.
Yeah.
And I love them. Like, I'm glad that I was able to see that example especially when my parents divorced, because he
Mhm.
was not really close to her at all, like, even still now. And I I remember being a kid, being in his basement, and we were talking about her daughter, his niece, who he loves to, in a way, almost like say, "Oh yeah, that's my daughter." And low key, I think it's because, like, he one of his biggest conquers was getting his niece to be a Hebrew Israelite.
Mm.
And the topic of her mother came up and how she was lesbian, and he said, if my brothers were still alive, they would have killed her for that. I said, what? Like, they would have strung her up, was
Time
his
out.
words. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
so sorry. Yeah. That
Wow.
was So hearing things like that, and then knowing, my Jamaican, extremely homophobic, my mother is the youngest out of all her older siblings. They do hate gay people. They,
Okay.
they don't realize, just like how you can clearly talk about racism and certain micro and macroaggressions with Black people, but when it becomes about gender misogyny, it's like cognitive dissonance. Whoa, 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 whoa. What's
100%.
going on?
Every
It
time. The queer community, what things did you see that you considered troublesome, besides, just, I guess, including just the things they say in IUIC?
Right. Just it's I remember one class, it was funny. It was not funny now. Like, it was funny then. Looking back on it, it's messed up. It's one of them type of things. But it was a guy there, and he came late in the class, noticed him or whatever. Like, oh, that's so and so. He brought him, because that's how the big thing. Like, oh, he brought so and so. Hey, how'd you come here? Oh, I'm so and so. Actually, one thing right before I get into that, one of the biggest things they do at the end of each service, they have everybody stand up that's new. Hey, introduce yourself. Oh, it's so and so. Where you from? Oh, okay, yeah, this and that. Oh, well, you welcome in. You know, you got a new family now. Blah blah blah. We gonna help you get to the kingdom of heaven, basically. And like that, like, oh yeah, then they say their tribe name. So like as an African American, I would be from the tribe of Judah, according to them. So I'm like, oh, I'm from the tribe of Judah. Everybody yells Judah, Judah. You know, it's like it hypes everybody else. Like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. You know, what I'm saying? It gets you in there more. But flipping that back, because I was talking about how the guy left before standing up. He got there late and then left early. And then I was talking to one of the guys that knew him, and he was basically saying like the class was about like the jail system basically. And one of the things he was saying, the guy, whatever the bishop, was joking about, you know, jail
assault.
Yeah. And that's what made the guy leave. Then they was joking about it, like, oh, this and that. But it was, at first it was like a joking, like, oh, like getting on him, like, oh, he's just too, you know what I'm saying, all type of slurs and everything. But then it was like, hey, either way, he gonna have to repent either way. Like, it wasn't like a he can't be saved thing, but it was more of he got a slim chance. Kind of similar to the what the captain was saying there, like, oh,
Cap said,
yeah, we ain't gonna let him in here, but you know, he can still keep the commandments. I feel like it's a very similar to that. And I feel like it's probably a lot of people a part of that, a part of IUIC that can't come to classes because they are that. And they still believe, but they like, oh no, I'm a little feminine, whatever, you can't come.
That's like, man, yeah, that just reminded me of not only the frat, because we were very homophobic in the frat as well. There were people who applied to join my chapter in college, and we straight up turned them down because they were either effeminate or known to be homosexual. That's something I've long grown past, but it's one of the things that definitely alienated me from the brotherhood, the chapter. So it reminded me of that, but it also reminded me of just Christians. You know, they act the same way. There's very much a lot of like, there's a lot of gay Christians. There's a lot of LGBT Christians, and people who are hetero in that religion typically either look down on or just straight up exclude that entire community from even being able to be valid Christians.
One man in the ISUPK had mentioned something about sexual assault.
By the way, they've all been molested as children in church. That's how they became that.
Being queer and relating that to it, and how you're being touched in churches. And I'm like, I mean, yes, I'm bisexual, but baby, Hebrew Israelite kids, it was the child-on-child molestation that I experienced with Hebrew Israelite kids of Hebrew Israelite parents. I didn't experience that, Randall. I mean, like, yes, there was other SA, but that was just because of one, age, and two, a lot of like that whole I hate to say it, like patriarchal mindset of, you know, I am going to adultify you as a child, and even though that is a clear adult who knows, yes, like right or from wrong type of situation, and that man was also not a Hebrew Israelite, so it wasn't necessarily considered. And I even hate to say it, from what my father told me, because I like blocked out a lot of that time period when I was 11 years old, that it was a Hebrew Israelite brother who said that there might be something going on with me, and influenced my father to go ahead and to like try to call CPS basically to address the situation, and it was addressed. Like, there was something going on. So I will say that I don't think that's necessarily true what that man said. Obviously, it's way more complex than that when it comes to like, one, queerness, in my personal opinion, is genetic.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, to start there. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, let's start there. It's genetic. And then like going on to say, yeah, that's what I experienced. Like, there, it didn't make me bi. Being a Hebrew Israelite was like being a very pro-black, anti-black person.
Wow.
It was a very, it's the, yeah, pro-black, anti-black was like
that's one way to say it.
It's the only
That's
way I
really
can.
really succinct. It's really, yeah, that's a really succinct way to put it. I mean, honestly, if you tasked me with describing them, it would probably be along the same lines, because I think that's some of the points I made is like
Yeah, they chill.
the the bad, and to the same point that my interviewee yesterday said, the bad in his opinion doesn't outweigh the good. And so,
Doesn't.
you know, you're pro black, but you're saying so many things that directly impact
Yes.
subsections of our community
Yeah.
really, really negatively. And you're spreading ideals and opinions about these people that could bring them real physical harm. And I think that's both pro black and anti black, because they received me like I was a family member, but I'm a black man.
Yeah. When you
So
go, you felt like if you was actually at Shabbat, I was like they probably would have offered you a plate if they were still cooking.
they were completely kind. They were completely receptive. I felt
Yes.
very at home. Like
Yeah.
I've stressed that every time I talk about them, because I want to be fair. But the things
Exactly.
they said, you know, it still doesn't
It's
counter the
it's
things they said.
haunting.
The
The
things they
thing
said were shocking.
they were
Like,
it was shocking
yeah.
because and I will as a person, one, I fully have no problem with saying I'm bisexual. My parents
Hmm.
don't even probably know because my mother, it's not even that she was very much a strict Hebrew Israelite. Like when she left my father, they got divorced when I was about 4 or 5. It felt more like she was ostracized from the community because
Hmm.
he was already a stable fixture. Prince K, who I said mentioned before, even though that was allegedly, I know for a fact it happened. I've seen that man actually backhand his daughter in front of me after just a few minutes before he was congratulating me because I was like 16. It was a holy day. We were at one of his locations for Kefarym, which was this synagogue in West Philly. And he was congratulating me about something that I think my father maybe had told the rest of the community about regarding my school. And I said, Toda, thank you. And I walk away, I'm probably less than 3 feet away. And I remember before I walked away, he was irritated with his daughter about something. He said, let me take you to the side and let me talk to you. And literally all I heard after a few seconds, just the biggest slap. And I do not recollect the adults being too shocked. The only reason that the men stepped in was because that slap then came with so much yelling and berating. And I
Hmm.
believe they would have tried it again if they were not there.
Hmm.
Um, there's also, like I said before about kids in the email, that I I just think it just depends on who the parents are and what type of like okay they give the leader in the communities.
Hmm.
My father has never hit me. He does not believe in actually like physical corporal punishment.
Hmm.
And so no one I know, at least from my mother, because my mother has beat me, but no one in those spaces has ever laid their hands on me. And I really just think it's just because not just the weight that my father kind of had, but because he personally, like I said, he does not believe in needing that to correct me.
They do push all, like, they want kids to learn how to read, and they were teaching them other languages when I was there, trying to learn Spanish, and because Hispanics, but trying to learn Spanish, trying to help them with finances, like stuff
Yeah.
that we don't get taught in school. You know what I'm saying? I
100%.
was above the kids. I taught the kids at my school, and it was one of the best parts of it. You know what I'm saying? Being able to see all the kids, I see them grow up,
Yeah.
laugh and joke, and but actually teaching them stuff that I didn't learn when I was their age, and like them being
Hmm.
super smart and like being able to catch stuff right away, and the precepts that I was learning, still trying to learn, they had them already. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They 5-6 years younger than me.
Kids are
And I
quick,
was,
man.
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
was a teacher for a while, and I enjoyed it too.
yeah, yeah. So I love that part. But it was more like you said, the like spankers. They really tough on kids. They're too tough at times. Like especially with kids with obvious ADHD. Like I have ADHD myself, not
Hmm.
diagnosed until as an adult. But as a kid, now I see like, oh, that kid definitely got ADHD. And it was that time where it was like they don't believe too much in science, but they kind of believe in it, but they just don't want to give kids medicines because they don't want to change too much of them. But they don't, you know what I'm saying? It was a fine line with IUIC and science. But that's a whole other topic. That's a whole video by itself.
Yeah.
But going back to the kids, it was. I just don't think I would raise my kid that way, basically. Even outside of the scripture stuff, like even like, well, that's the whole thing. But outside of like forcing the scriptures down their throat, it was just how they dealt with their kids. It was more like.
Did you witness kids being beaten any kind of way that you thought was, unnecessary?
I'm against spanking in general. So I think spanking. I don't think that works.
I mean, I am too.
Okay, yeah,
I am too, just on a philosophical level. So,
Yeah.
did you see? Do you see any instances of these? This treatment of kids that you're speaking about?
No, like just like straight
Just
up like beating them. No.
Yeah. But you've heard them espouse these ideas and talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. Like because I've definitely seen kids get whoopings for sure. If that's what you're asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking. But and so you're saying that these whoopings were over the line at times?
I feel like they wouldn't. Like a kid with ADHD that can't sit down, not gonna sit down because you're beating their ass. It's just not gonna happen.
It's a good point.
And that's stuff like that. Like,
do they believe in ADHD? Is that something that like is valid to them?
I don't even know, to be honest. They don't want to go over that type of stuff. Yeah. Okay. I think it's more of like how right wingers see it, like conservative things. Like, okay, it might be some of people might have it, but all these numbers, no, it's they bumping, pushing the numbers up, or they feeding us stuff to make us like this. That's how.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
So I remember being just turning 18. I cannot tell you it was Kefarym, another damn location. It could have been. I know it was somewhere in Southwest Philly. And I remember my dad taking me there, and there was this new man. Like, I had never seen him before. I just assumed he was just maybe that was his first time either at Shabbat ever or his first time at our congregation. Because sometimes you'll see Hebrew Israelites who they might have come from another, like, even more niche congregation, and they got in contact with somebody. They said, hey, yeah, come to Shabbat, check it out, see how it's going. That man probably couldn't have been more than like 33, 32 or something like that. Again, I'm 18, and I'm being taught in my entire life, and I was telling us, I was like, yeah, girl, I'm glad we could kiki. We were on the same page with that. She said, growing up, you could be pleasant, you could be polite as a woman, but there's no, you can't even really smile at men like that when you get past a certain age, because it is going to be taken as a flirt.
Wow.
You realize that you're more likely to be groomed by an older man in those spaces. I hate to say, like, even a situation with me, I don't want to say that he was necessarily grooming me. I mean, the whole thing groomed me. But I will say that this man, who I consider like my second father figure, and I've had for the most part nothing but great memories about when I went to New York and graduated high school, went to college, and he lives in New York. Like, my father was born and raised there, but he lived there. And he was like, I'm so proud of you. I want to take you out to dinner just as a congratulatory dinner. Just like, I was like, yeah, okay. I didn't think anything weird of it because family friend, especially someone very close to my father. Yeah. It felt like he's always been respectful to me. But then we're, going out, and he's a vegan, so he takes me to a vegan restaurant. And I didn't mind the fact that he was also teaching me very old school chivalry, things that my father didn't teach me, like, men are to stand on the outside of the sidewalk, not the inside, just in case the car, splashes on a woman, things like that. I was like, okay, old school chivalry. But it was a certain amount of questioning, like the way that he would ask me certain questions. It's not like, oh, you're a young woman. I am, like, as a person, I'm just curious about your mind. The questions felt like I'm trying to gauge how well you would be as a wife.
Okay. Yeah.
Where's your mind at when it comes to certain things on religion, on spirituality, and things of that sort. And holding my hand for too long, or just the way that he looked at me, and I did not get, and it made me feel so uncomfortable. And I was like 18, just so awkward that after that night, I never spoke to him again. And I found out a few years later, like when I came back to Philadelphia, that he had passed away, I think from cancer. But yeah, but going back to very briefly, you mentioned like a lot of them have different kids. My mother told me when I was a child, she was like, that man that you're talking about, you do know he has multiple sets of kids, right? I was like, what do you mean multiple sets? Because I only knew that's the man who, oh, in the picture, he's next to his wife and two sons in front of him. He, I thought, okay, like, yeah, I met his sons and a daughter that came later that's on that picture. Then he also, like, that was his wife, his legal wife. They got divorced. He got remarried and then had another son that I don't have a picture of. And I was like, oh, you talking about Ovadia? And she was like, no, I'm not talking about those kids. I'm talking about the ones from the previous marriage. I was like, what are you talking? Previous marriages? Previous. So there, yes, unfortunately, way too many men. Even I've questioned if my father has had other kids. From what everyone's told me, oh no, he hasn't had any kids. But I'm like, look, some about men who change their names. Some about anybody, but specifically men who change their names for religious reasons. I always have to side eye you. My specific community never raised to be anti-African. Now, is there anti-African sentiments now that I look back on it? Oh, absolutely. Like my father, even a few years ago, I realized, oh, you're still a very conservative man. You still have a very specific mindset. He made a comment about like African immigrants, and I was just like, aren't you all up in Ghana looking up and down for a wife? Down,
Yeah.
that don't make no sense. But we were always taught that alongside of being the real Hebrew Israelites, that we are also descendants of the transatlantic slavery trade, excuse me, slave trade. My
Okay.
father was so adamant about teaching me African American history. It's one of like at least that area at that time growing up, it just felt like it was a very outward seeming pro black space. There was a lot of like, we want to go back to Africa. There was like, they even considered Israel part, like they always say Israel was a part of Africa growing up. And so even those Hebrew Israelites in the 80s who went to Dimona, Israel, they were going because they were like, well, this is quote unquote our home, and this is also in the continent of Africa. Um, my father always took, like, that's one of the reasons that him and other Hebrew Israelites took all the kids to the late great Black's wax museum,
Right.
though in not the correct age. They were always still very much like, if there's any museums about African American history, about slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, we're going to take them. I've went to probably almost every single African American base or slavery based museum in Philadelphia because of my father.
Wow.
And I've also like had, an appreciation for African American history that I was not taught. It was a weird dichotomy of like, you can have pride in the struggle of your ancestors, but you cannot identify with the American identity.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
That's so weird push and pull.
It's a very weird push and pull. It makes you, it really does not ground you at all. It makes you feel very much like you're an alien in your own home. You can't,
Yeah.
like for a while, I knew how to identify when it came to legal documents, but in terms of just if I'm a random stranger, we're having a conversation, we're really passionate about this idea of authenticity, this idea of reclaiming like actual Black, indigenous, African indigeneity, or an idea of African indigeneity as the descendants of African like people.
Yeah.
Then I can now say, oh, well, yes, like I'm African American with Jamaican heritage. My African American family are like, they have a lot of Gullah heritage in them. They're like really proud of that. I had no idea all that was going on. And I understand it's just because of the decades, centuries, generations of trauma, different identities getting lost and things like that. But I think that's like how we said it really for the Hebrew Israelites at that time, it was about identity, especially for men. It was this idea of you know, we in my personal opinion, my father was almost kind of like the idea of a black Huxtable, black pro-African Hebrew Israelite Cosby. And in my personal opinion, he looked just like Cosby too. But that's neither here nor there.
Fair enough.
And he was very much respectability politics. So they did care a lot about their children's education. And I would say that it felt growing up that they were some of the only communities who had the idea, even if it wasn't necessarily the best execution of, I understand that there's a level of prejudice that is subconscious in schools and classes. There's a level of, or there's a lack of education when it comes to actual factual history. Even though the actual history is very disgusting, that we're not teaching our kids, or just microaggressions, macroaggressions. My father was always trying to put me in a pro-black school or something where I was not the minority. I think there was only one time in my life I was like in a camp. That was like the last time I ever went to summer camp. I was the only black kid. But honestly, being raised with Hebrew Israelites, you learn the art of degradation kink. Sorry. You learn the art of degradation. You learn that not everybody, but way too many people in cultures depending got a degradation kink based on certain things.
100%. No, 100%.
So yeah, that's
comes through.
when you said in the documentary or your interview that like they were anti-African. I was like, oh, what a bomba clad. What? That's what my
Yes.
mother felt elevated, because she felt like, the closer to looking like you were African, the more almost on the pedestal, the more natural you were looking. Like you had natural hair, locks, especially
Yeah.
if you had like headscarves on. If you looked more like a Muslim Nigerian woman, that was almost like peak beauty when it came to the Hebrew Israelites, at least in the Philadelphia communities growing up. So even to the point where my friend, we're gonna call her S. My friend S, her mother, like though her father and my father are very close friends, and both our fathers are African American, her mother is Puerto Rican, and she's very, I would say, somewhat white passing Puerto Rican, and like definitely mixed, lighter skin. And I know for a fact, has had experiences where she felt looked down upon because they would like, there were many times she has heard women say, well, she's not even really fully black anyway, even though at that time there was that emphasis of, no, people from the Caribbean are also Hebrew Israelites. The thing that shook me, I would say, even like the start of the pandemic, was that randomly Hebrew Israelites started saying that Native Americans were Hebrew Israelite. I was like, what are y'all talking about? I've never in my life,
Yeah.
never in my life heard it. It was a very pro-black cult. Like, but pro-black, but with the twist of the UPK saying, "Oh, niggas in the Bible." I'm like, yeah, my father's generation very much like we don't say that.
If it's not just a combination of all these things, what made you start to drift or eventually leave?
Um, Honestly, I didn't feel the what I felt when I was there first. I was there 4 years. The last year is probably as far as feeling like I was there at part of the camp. I was in school more. I wasn't coming down as much, so I wasn't being around them as much. I was being around other people, being around other races that I wasn't being around before. I was making new friends that I wasn't making before. It was friends, but like, hey, you got your friends up there at the campus. You got to shoot them like keep them arm length basically. And I met a lot of people that are my friends to this day, and like good friends I talk to all the time. It was weird that I wasn't seeing what they were telling me no more.
Right.
About the world, about life, about other races. I wasn't seeing it no more myself, and it just was throwing me off. And I was still coming. I was still at least going like every 2 weeks, because we're really supposed to be down there twice a week, because you got to be there Wednesdays for their classes they do for just the guy, for just the men. Which learn the strips. You're learning how to go on out and on the streets, and then on Saturdays for the Sabbath, of course. And then one day I was sick. No, actually, before even that. It was Feast of Tabernacles, so that's where in the scriptures, basically the holiday is celebrated by going being outdoorsy. You know, it's going tents, camping. Couldn't think of the word. It's going camping basically. And while I was camping, go out there, helping everybody put the tents up, talking to people, having a good time. But it was still, it just wasn't a feeling that I was having. So I go to my leadership, actually, the people that's above me, like, hey, I'm having this feeling. I don't know what to do. They tell me to go through a couple of scriptures, and then it was like, hey, you know, you just gotta keep the faith. You just gotta do what you gotta do, type of thing. And I feel like they reacted like that just because how my personality, how I was there, I was, you know what I'm saying, and they thought I was like, oh, he'd be all right. But as far as them, I mean, I'm much better now. But as far as they're, like, he'd be all right. And then it was just going like that for a few more weeks, and then I was sick one Saturday, and I didn't go. I was like 2 hours away from the school, so I didn't drop down that weekend. I was like, I can't go. I'm sick. The next weekend, I was feeling a little better. I probably could have won, but I'm like, I'm still sick. The next weekend after that, I don't say nothing to nobody. Because you know, hey, I'm about to be all, you know what I'm saying? You texted the group chat that we had. I don't text nobody. Nothing happened. I was just like, I don't think I want to be here, though, bro. I don't know. Then I go to Chick-fil-A on a Saturday. You know, one of the biggest days is Sabbath, no buying, no working. I go to Chick-fil-A. It was I thought that's a sign. Obviously, it was just random. But I go to Chick-fil-A, give me you know, spicy and some fries and a mac and cheese. They're like, all right, it's gonna be blah blah blah, 16, whatever. I give them a $20 bill. They're like, hey, our cash not down. We already got your food. Here you go. Keep your money. It was on a Saturday. Sun was up. I'm like, I just bought to get $20. Either the devil talking to me or God talking to me. I don't know who it is. Yeah. And there I'll just say the devil, but I was just like, you know what I'm saying? And then after that, it was just, they started calling me like, hey, what's going on? Obviously my brother was in it, so he was coming down hard on me at the time. But also that I was so far away. I wasn't, you know, 2 hours away. Nobody about to come over there and get me, you know? So it was like, I had that escape that a lot of people don't have.
Fair enough.
You know, my parents. Separation. Exactly. My you know, my mom, she's not in it. So it's like, I don't have like, oh, I gotta get my mom. You know, I have a brother that I wasn't as close to growing up. Got close to probably middle school, high school, and then we're not in school anymore. So it's like it's different. And you know, I feel for the people, especially the women that are in situations like that, because not much you can do.
I was having a deep spiritual psychosis, in my personal opinion. I remember it started in 2018. I went to college for architecture and design. I was in a 5-year program. I only did 4.5 years. What was it? The first part of the 4th year, we had to go, it's like a thesis year. So we picked a year-long project. I picked, for my professor, he had 2 countries, Italy, Brazil. I said, I want to go to Brazil. I did the Brazil one, had a great time. Went there. We probably spent like 2 or so weeks there. I had a fantastic time, even though it was a very trying time. And I learned a lot that helped me to better understand the historical context of Black people, especially when it comes to like spiritual practices, just give a more broad understanding and kind of free myself from a lot of things. Yeah. But there was this thought in the beginning of the trip, if not throughout most of the trip, was that I really felt that God was punishing me for enjoying myself. I genuinely thought God was punishing me. I got to Brazil. I tried to like plug my laptop in the charge at our Airbnb. My external hard drive busted.
Damn.
And I feel like you know what it's like to work on projects and have.
You just brought back some flashbacks.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
There's nobody who works with cameras as much as I do who hasn't had some catastrophes related to hard drives, and yeah, you just reminded me for sure.
Yeah, and doing all that in Portuguese in Brazil, like trying to get that figured out, and like I'm like, what is going on? But at the same time, in the most calm moments that I finally had while I was on that trip, we got invited to one of the mojos or the favelas. And because they were doing a practice run for the Escola do Samba, the School of Samba in Salgueiro. And that theme that year was Shango. And I was like, oh, I had no idea. I was like, what's going on? Like, who's Shango? I'm learning about these things, not realizing, because I also like Gnostic studies, Oh, like, these are characters that changed within culture. They change within time. They might have similar characteristics, but they're really kind of meant to give a moral, like a folk tale type
Yeah.
of story, Like it's not necessarily meant to be taken literally. Either way, like the Bible. Wow.
I mean, you really just spoken. You just spoke my whole opinion on the Bible for years into
Like the
the ether
Bible.
just
It
now.
is
So yeah,
it's unfortunately the Hebrew Israelites take it way too literally, and because of that literal depiction, I had a very unhealthy relationship with God. I thought that God innately hated me. I actually still believe the God of the Bible hates women. I there was like I
look,
just felt,
you're not alone. You're not alone.
like there was, and I felt shame for feeling that way
Of
about
course you would.
those in the
Of course you would.
Bible.
I have a scripture that I'm looking at that's supposed to be proving how the Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans are Israelites, and I don't want to pull it out and read it to people because I don't want them to be like, "Hey, that don't mean that," and me to get
Poking
caught up.
holes in it.
Exactly. And then try to do more research on it. I couldn't find a better way to explain it. They was like, "Hey, just if you can't go to that one, use a different one." And I'm like, if the whole Bible's supposed to be our book, how is that not? You know what I'm saying? And then one more thing, we were talking about the firmament, because in the scriptures, in like a lot of people, a lot of scholars think of how they thought of the solar system before. You got the firmament, it's like water basically. So you got the firmament in like the seas, and then you got the firmament in the skies, which is space. So space is full of water. That's like the breakdown of it basically. Well, some, not all. It's not. I'm pretty sure like widely accepted. That's what they thought, but it's like it's still speculation. Anyway, I was talking to one of the kids about it, and he kind of was like, "No, that's not true. Space is ain't no airspace. How can it be water?" I'm like, "Wait a second, that makes sense. Why? How's it gonna be water? You know what I'm saying? That kind of follows." But then me telling him like, "No, this and that. You got to watch the class by so and so." So now I'm like pulling back into, okay, hey, listen to what he's saying, and now what is true. That's another
Science.
Yeah, exactly.
Science.
Provable facts. Yeah.
Fear at that time until I went to college to really like allow myself to just not do Sabbath. I literally in college I thought that I was also being punished because I wasn't doing the Sabbath, and then I was able to eventually let go. I really sat down, I would say, like around the pandemic, and I realized, Yeshara, you have a fucked up relationship with God.
Mm.
Like you have you really think that he is just, and I wrote it down and I was like, isn't that all a narcissist? Like when the word narcissist was super popular, everyone's like learning about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? Hold on about that. It's like you're trying to tell them, hey, you're asking for Black supremacy, but you are the oppressor and everybody else is still oppressed under you.
100%. And I mean, honestly, that's why I characterized them in the most recent video as trying to be the boot. And I think that a lot of Black people fall prey to that. We develop our own independent identity to take that power back from our oppressors, which, look, I get, I sympathize with. I understand where you're coming from. I get the cause and effect here. But when you do that and then you turn yourself into the Black boot that stomps everybody else out, all you've done is swap dictators. Like that, nothing else has. You haven't improved the situation. In fact, you've kind of made it worse because nobody can hurt Black people like other Black people, and especially when it comes to Black women, nobody can hurt Black women like Black men because we're the closest ones to them.
We always thought the UPK was also much more radical. Like my father never kept me around people who he felt their ego was a little bit too big. And again, I've seen him have many clashes with Prince K or some other like people who they were like some of the things they were saying was a little too extreme, even necessarily for them. But I will say there was a certain level of authoritative control. Yes, there, in my opinion, the men like Prince K, he could gallivant and shenan once and shenan again, but they're not gonna put him up on a pedestal and say, "Oh yes, he's the greatest X, Y, and no."
Right.
I've been getting a lot of religious psychosis videos on my YouTube recommended.
Me too.
Yeah. they watch one video, you're like, oh, feed some of this. But some of the stuff I was reading, also reading about cults is the main thing I think that makes them a cult. Because I think if we talk about cults versus religions, most religions could be put in that cult thing, especially
agree.
Jehovah Witnesses and
agree.
of that ilk. But I think the Hebrew Israelites, they come from that branch almost, the Jehovah Witnesses. So that shutting the person that leaves, that's the biggest thing. Or he can't speak to this person. Oh, he left, don't speak to him never again. Oh, he did this, don't ever speak. Because it's people that I thought was like this with after I left, they don't talk. Hey, I can't talk to you, this and that. It's like, hey, that's the cult part for sure. But because one of the things they said, they keep saying we brainwashed. We brainwashed by the Lord. We brainwashed by the Bible. Like, I guess.
You said it. You said it, not me.
You got me.
You got me. I'm glad you mentioned that, especially because I actually wanted to ask you, what are your views now that you're out? Where do you land on the religious spectrum in general?
I say for the first 6 months to a year, after I left, I still believed a good amount. I still believe I was an Israelite for sure. And it was just like certain stuff that I'm like, okay, maybe it's not the right doctrine. Maybe it's just, some stuff like that. And then I kind of just stepped away completely. Like God gonna be God. He gonna show me what he gonna show me. And then it just never got shown, I guess. And he's like, oh, people say, they're like, oh, you can just wait. You gotta wait. Like I had my whole life uprooted, basically. So it's like, if that wasn't the calling, it's gonna come later, maybe. But
Maybe.
right now I would consider myself probably agnostic. I don't know what's out there. It could be. I'm leaning towards not, but it could be. But I want to live my life based on the morals that I think the morals I have. I think if everybody had them, life would be better. That's how I want to treat people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so I guess my closing thoughts, as far as the Hebrew Israelites, IUIC, all the other camps, I think overall, most of them really care about their community. They want the best for the community. It's just the way that they do it won't end up helping the community. It's hurting them more, and they don't see that because they don't see the bad part of it. They see, the husbands, the wives, the kids look happy not all the time, but it looks happy, but mentally you're not happy. You got to, I could die anytime because God could take me out, or everything happens for a reason, but why is this reason? I don't know. It's just a lot of confusion. And I feel like if you are really, like, some people are might be watching or might be looking at stuff that is catching their eye, like, oh, maybe I heard that before, or maybe I really want this. Just look more into it, do as much research as you want to do, because you might come out of it like, oh no, I do believe this. All power to you. Just keep doing research,
Because of the extreme racism that these people, like these black men, have experienced. Like, sometimes a broken clock can be right twice a day, and I'm like,
I acknowledged as much. Like,
they
talking to
do
him.
just small things. Like, you'll say, okay, I do understand. Like, you can't, in my personal opinion, you cannot say that you're the oppressed class and the oppressor.
A lot of information here. I think one piece I want to make sure I touch on while I have you is the signs of a cult, and which signs of the official signs of a cult did you notice. And so I'll start with just kind of yes or no, and you can elaborate on pieces that you want to elaborate on, but I just want to kind of get through them and see what you think. So some of these signs include authoritarian control with a leader who claims to be infallible. Did you ever see anything like that?
Yes and no.
Okay. And I'll let you elaborate after we get through the list. So we'll stick with yes or no for the first one. Isolation of members from outsiders.
Yes.
Yes. Suppression of critical thinking or questions.
Yes.
The use of fear and shame to control members.
Yes.
Black or white view of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And exploitation, specifically including demands of like financial sacrifice or anything that comes into the category of demands without transparency as to why.
Right. 100%. That's not even just the transparency, just the results.
Yeah.
Yeah. The lack of results.
Okay. And since there was really only one of these that was even in question, I'll go back to authoritarian control with a leader who claims to be infallible. What made you take pause on that one?
Because the leaders who claim to be in control, I was not specifically in front of. I have
Gotcha.
heard stories of them.
Mhm.
And the only story that I can remember was the group of Hebrew Israelites that, like back in the day in the 80s, people probably saw them very briefly on TV, but those were the group of Hebrew Israelites that went back to, I believe it was Dimona, Israel.
Yeah.
And my father had told me, like, he had newspapers that they used to come out and print, and somehow, some way, they like came into America. They were in circulation in some Hebrew Israelite communities, like updates on what's going on in their camp. Um, and he basically told me that, those people are not really worshiping Yahweh. They're not worshiping Jehovah. They're worshiping Ben, whoever it was that was the leader. And it made sense because I would see like a newspaper, like kids are in a classroom, but there's a picture of their leader also in that classroom,
Right.
like huge as hell.
That
I
whoa. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. You just reminded me of my visit to the school, the ISUPK. General Johanna was right there on the wall, biggest in front of a big ass fire. Like I thought it
and
was just. I didn't put that. I didn't connect those until you just mentioned.
yes, yes, which is why we always thought the UPK was also much more radical.
I'm walking away with a much clearer picture of a woman's perspective being raised in this, having a father that's deep in this, and the people that kind of were in your orbit and how you were affected by those people. Obviously, this is a lot of information. I really appreciate you giving me the time
Of
to
course.
walk through all this. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm well versed in the long interview game by now, but this one was particularly full of bombshells that are either confirming something I suspected or things that I couldn't have possibly anticipated. So, yeah, thanks again.